Good morning on this March 15th and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Be prepared, but don't panic. That message from state leaders across Georgia as we navigate through uncharted territory with the coronavirus. The Georgia legislature comes to a halt until further notice. We'll take a look at the bills that made it through crossover day. And will Georgia even matter in the Democratic presidential primary? The gang is all here. Theron, Phil, Janelle, Kathy. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
What a week it has been. We begin with the state's response to the coronavirus. The governor's office reporting the first Georgia death due to the virus on Thursday as the number of people diagnosed continues to increase. Phil, we're going to get right into this, and I want to start with you. I have to say everyone from the governor to the public health commissioner Kathleen Toomey to House and Senate leaders and Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, I think all doing a really good job of informing us and keeping on top of this and not causing a mass panic.
Well, I would have to agree with that. And obviously a lot of concern out there. Everybody's trying to get the correct information. I will put in a plug for the CDC website. I think that's got some great information. It's up to date and accurate, and it shows around Georgia what's going on. I think the main message, while everyone has to be careful and cautious and practice good hygiene, is that this is still very low risk in Georgia and nationally. So I think we're going to have to regroup with regard to the legislature. I know we'll be talking more about that in a couple of minutes. But for right now, I think Georgia is right where we want to be in terms of informing the populace.
Well, and I'll tell you, things change by the minute. So even preparing for the show, you know, we're trying to keep up to date as much as we can. We tape on Friday, so things could change by the time this airs. But Theron, the governor's office kind of got some slack about opening up this state park and allowing some folks who don't need hospitalization but test positive for the coronavirus, kind of opening up a state park. But I think that was a really good idea to keep them isolated and for folks who can't afford or don't have any other options to go elsewhere.
Absolutely, and I think the governor responded to that during his remarks. I think he gave an example of if a parent is unfortunately diagnosed with the coronavirus, then you got to also think about the child, and you got to completely separate them and, quite frankly, isolate them so they don't spread this to other people. And so I do think that the criticism that he received was unwarranted. I think at the end of the day, I know from a lot of resources that people are totally focused on this, working directly with the governor and the mayor of Atlanta and the CDC and others. And so it was the right thing to do. And I think that, listen, everyone is taking this very seriously. Yeah.
Janelle, the governor requested $100 million from the rainy day fund to be used to combat the spread of the virus. A good decision because we have about $3 billion, thank goodness, in the rainy day fund in reserves. And really, we might see the need to pull down even more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that is definitely a good move when it comes to this. My only concern when it does come to pulling funds and starting to issue funds when it comes to the coronavirus is that we are keeping in consideration that we don't know how long it's going to last, and so that we are budgeting in a way where we can sustain over a longer period of time.
Well, the governor suggested that schools, Kathy, and school districts should really make their own decision over whether to close, making it clear that the order was not a mandate. But here in Metro Atlanta, most school districts really heeded the warnings and closed for a couple of weeks. What do you think? Should that have been a stronger message, or do you think he's kind of keeping a measured approach to this?
I don't know. I think he's keeping a measured approach. I think, the language of mandating or, get on it yourselves.
So we've seen some governors do that.
Yeah, I think some governors have done it, and at this point, I think the schools sort of got ahead of the governor on that one and started doing their closures. I think that, I frankly think we're so close to spring break for many school systems that it's a good idea for them all to close and just put a pause in it and see where we are, because we'll know in another week or so, how this is escalating in our community or whether it's escalating, less than what we would have anticipated.
I think a lot of parents are, distance learning is coming in handy for some of us who have kids at home. We'll see how that works. And I know a lot of folks are worried because daycares, will they be open? Will they be closed? So there's just kind of a lot of questions right now. So Phil, let's talk about a big issue here, which is the economic impact. There's so many directions I feel to go here. For those with 401ks, we don't even want to open them up. Sporting events delayed, even canceled, including the Final Four, which Atlanta was so looking forward to hosting. We thought it was going to be the best one ever.
Right. We lost the Masters tournament. It's been postponed in Augusta.
Hopefully just delayed for a few weeks. Conventions that were supposed to come here, tens of thousands of people. There was a big dental convention that was canceled. This is quite a hit. So, is there anything that you think cities, state government can do to really soften this blow and not have people, panicking over the financial part of this?
Right, and of course it's tied in with the national efforts too. We are going to be taking a big hit. I agree with Kathy. We might know more in the next week or two in terms of not just what's going on in Georgia, but nationally and how it escalates or de-escalates. I think that's good advice. And I think the Convention and Visitors Bureaus around the state, I think they can still, if there's no, like in Augusta, there hasn't been any cases, thank goodness. So I think you could still promote tourism, and perhaps if you postpone it a month or so, the tournament, that could work. There's certain areas of the state and country where that wouldn't work, and you have to be very cautious and careful.
And Kathy and I were talking before we started the show about, service industry, right? All of the restaurants and all of the restaurant workers and, just small business owners in these areas that will be impacted. There's a lot of things going around on social media about, hey, buy gift certificates online. Like, there are things that you can do to help.
Yeah, I think back to the global financial crisis, and I was working for a large global nonprofit at the time, and it was really, really difficult. And I think, we have nonprofits that are social service agencies that are, that are kicking into high gear right now. So this is the time to think about the one that you feel closest to, and go online, make a contribution that's monthly for the next few months, to just give them a little bit of a boost. There's never too much money in their pockets, and I think that would be good. I also think that this is really a time for our political leaders to listen to women, because women are the caregivers. Women are taking care of the kids that are staying home. They're reaching out to elderly folks. They're looking after their neighbors. Not to say men aren't, but that burden typically, in the anticipation of it, typically falls on women. And I've heard from a lot of women who are, just really concerned about, lost time, lost wages, how to take care of everybody and keep everybody safe at the same time. So this would be a good time when we're thinking about how to spend $100 million or $1 billion or whatever it is we have to do to prop up the economy, is to listen to what women need. And I think that would give us a really good basis for how to get started on the right foot.
I don't think Janelle and I will disagree with you there.
Not at all.
And they wouldn't dare.
But don't forget the men.
I'm not forgetting the men.
Yes.
I'm not forgetting the men. Just ask women first for a change.
Darren, how we talk about the airport so much on the show. How does the world's busiest airport, the world's largest airline, deal with a European ban on travel?
They're anticipating a 25 to 30% slash in their growth. They got 90,000 employees worldwide, 36,000 here in Georgia. And so
you're talking about Delta.
And Delta, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, being Delta. That's the only airline I always talk about, because it's the only airline I fly. Hint, hint, Ed Bastian. But no, the thing about it is that I got to give a really big shout out to CEO Ed Bastian, but also General Manager John Selden and Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, is because they are really making sure that they're taking every single step they can to make sure that people feel safe. When you saw the stories that Fox 5 did about just the cleanliness of the airport, people really making sure that they communicate, was wonderful. But listen, at the end of the day, Delta had no idea that it was going to be this massive. But beyond the flight attendants, you got to think about the workers, the people who provide all the things that come along with your Delta experience. These folks are really left wondering what's going to really happen, and so they're going to have to make some cuts. But ultimately, I definitely think that the airport is going to be prepared to do whatever happens.
Go ahead, Phil.
I would agree with 90% of what you're saying. The blind spot, though, is, and I wish the city and the airport security and police would get rid of the homeless people that are there. Their hygiene is terrible. They're sleeping in the lobbies and wandering about, and that is a health problem. And so I don't know why this is still being allowed. You can move them. You can try to get them to shelters. This problem has got to be addressed.
I can respond to that. I think MARTA is doing everything they can. Also, the airport. They're working
still
with
there.
Yeah, but the thing is, Phil, you should actually come out there with me one day.
I do go out there.
Well, but you got to go early in the morning. You really can't stop them from taking public transit to the airport. The airport has definitely.
I'm talking about the lobbies and laying around and sleeping overnight.
They have a team of people that go out very early in the morning. It's really usually between the hours of 1 and 5 a.m. Where the homeless is sleeping there. And so the airport is doing everything they can to make sure that they reduce the amount of homelessness that's happening there, but also do it with a lot of care and enforcement that doesn't get out of control.
It is a health care problem.
I want to say, because this is an issue that Atlanta will deal with, and it's the homeless issue too. I mean, this kind of envelopes the entire coronavirus topic that we're talking about.
Population.
But I will say, I was on Bill Niggett's show earlier this week, Political Rewind, and there was so much talk about trust at this point in time, right? Trust in government, trust in businesses that they'll keep you safe, trust that they're sanitizing and cleaning. Janelle, just weigh in on that last word here, just kind of on your general feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there is a trust that has to come from everyone else, but then there's a personal trust as well. And I just wanted to make sure I make a statement on with the homeless thing, because I totally agree with Phil on that one. But the homeless issue in the city of Atlanta has been something that we've talked about so many times before, and it shouldn't come to a situation like this when we finally now have to address it. So I do think that this is something we need to look at on a much deeper level past the virus.
All right, time for another day too. Coming up, Georgia legislators are sent home until further notice. We'll discuss the bills that made the crossover deadline.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
House Speaker David Ralston and Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan suspending this year's legislative session until further notice due to the spread of the coronavirus. Therein, really no surprises in this announcement, but wow. We haven't seen this before.
This is leadership, and I think that the lieutenant governor and the speaker and the governor all came together, and they decided that they had to really take into effect that at the state capitol, the speaker also called for people who were coming there to visit not to come because they were trying to reduce the amount of people over there. They suspended the page program. I mean, I missed the last 2 days that I was there this week of seeing these pages who are so excited to be able to participate in the democratic process. But more importantly, I think that we have to understand that they have to really make sure that they cover as many important pieces of legislation as possible, but they've got to make sure that they deal with some of the budget issues. And so I want to commend them for definitely doing the right thing. And it's likely they will probably have to come back later in the spring, but I definitely think that as of Monday, we will be out of session. Hopefully we'll sunny die and then come back possibly for a special session.
Well, I mean, no doubt they've got to vote on the big budget too. Phil, let's talk about some of the issues that kind of did make it. We'll kind of address our issues other than the coronavirus right now. The state Senate passed a bill aimed at addressing long lines at the polls, but some Democrats think that this bill would result in just some confusion.
Right. Let me address that, but I think it's important for everybody to know that they did pass before this adjournment that we're talking about the mid-year budget, and we can talk about things as the weeks go by. What was added. I was glad to see that the Republicans did fund the health departments in rural areas. That had been a concern with a lot of people, and we could go on and on with that. But with this particular bill that you're talking about, I think the Republicans' heart was in the right place. It was basically a party line vote, as you're alluding to. The Democrats, you can't win with the Democrats. They accuse falsely voter suppression of the Republicans and the governor and all of that. And here, when the state Senate is trying to address that concern of long lines, can you maybe see if you can pull some people into another voting? Where I vote, there's heavy polling areas and there's not so heavy, and you could shift. And so I think it was a good faith effort. The Democrats were trying to score cheap political points.
Kathy, weigh in on that, because some of the critics were like, well, like Phil said, you can't win with Democrats. If we close precincts, they criticize. If we open more precincts, they criticize.
Well, I think it comes back to the trust issue. It's not what you were talking about when you invoked it a minute ago. But I think that the issue for people is that we have had trust betrayed in voting here and around the country. And so to think about, when, where, and how people are going to move polling places around causes people concern. And the folks that have been impacted the most have been people who have less access to social media, less able to kind of process information that might be out there that you and I might pick up a little
Betrayed the
faster.
trust. What are you talking about? Governor Kemp didn't betray any trust.
Sure he did.
There was no systematic voter suppression.
did.
You have no documentation for that.
Yeah, there's
it's
plenty
a
of
lie.
documentation, and there are court cases that have been invoked in this. And I think that, when you have a Secretary of State that presides over their own election and that purges people from the polls repeatedly leading up to the election. I think that is trust betrayed. You don't have to believe it, but I will tell you, sitting where I sit, that it has been betrayed.
Okay, wait, let Janelle weigh in.
I have to totally disagree. Anyone can file a lawsuit. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's actually a problem. So we don't want to look at lawsuits as that. And most of these lawsuits are just to get attention anyway. So I just think that we have to get past the whole Voter Suppression Act and all that stuff. And I agree. I totally agree with Phil on this one as well. That it's no pleasing Democrats. It's almost as if Democrats are very, very insatiable, and it's kind of like you have a whole lot of suggestions and a whole lot of ideas but no solutions. And I just think that we do have to do something about it.
And I'm surprised you're spreading this myth because, yes, there are problems in county elections. We understand that, and it has to be addressed. But there's no systematic fraud, and that's never been proven.
Not at all.
You've changed from fraud. You've
Well,
gone
there's
from
no systematic
suppression to fraud, and
I'm
those are
going to do
two
both.
entirely
No,
different
you
things.
both-
You're
you
the
both
ones
talk-
that invoke fraud when you talk about
There's no
suppressing
systematic
votes.
suppression, and you have no
Okay.
proof of that.
Yes.
All right, Theron, real quickly. You don't have to weigh in on this, but
Go
I have
ahead.
a lot-
Go right ahead.
I have a lot to say.
You know, I
and
wanna
I don't want
find
Kathy
out.
to feel like she's out here on her own.
That's
But
all right.
anyway,
I want to find
we'll
out
take the
about
time.
sports betting and gambling because it's really hard to find a summary of everything that went on because the
Yeah.
journalists in Atlanta are focusing on coronavirus.
So as the session ended Thursday night, and we came in briefly on Friday just to assign some bills to different committees, the casino gambling bill and the sports betting bill was still basically to be determined. I am not going to say that it's over and that it's dead, but it's highly unlikely that any bills, not just casino gambling and sports betting, if you were not able to cross your bill over to one of the chambers, either the Senate chamber or the House chamber. But hey, listen, Sunny Die is going to be on Monday. Anything can happen. Kathy and I were talking earlier. You can always tack language on to different bills, and so it's basically still to be determined. But it's got to be really an appetite for it, and I think that both lobbyists and organizations that tend to benefit from these two pieces of legislation passing are working very hard.
All right, thank you. Well, coming up, early voting is underway here in Georgia for the Democratic presidential primary, but does it matter? We'll discuss straight ahead.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Georgia voters are heading to the polls leading up to the state's Democratic presidential primary, but with former Vice President Joe Biden in the lead, some are saying Georgia's vote may not matter. Do you think that's the case, Theron?
Not at all. I think that Senator Bernie Sanders is, if you look at his spending in Georgia, the Biden campaign and the Sanders campaign both have TV ads, basically using their interpretation of the endorsement through wording from former President Barack Obama. I know that the Biden campaign has placed a significant radio buy in Georgia. He was supposed to be here, him being Biden, over the weekend before March 24th, but the Democratic Party canceled those events. I think Senator Sanders was looking at being here as well. So no, Georgia will matter. It is still a significant amount of delegates that are at stake.
We've seen some ads still, here in Georgia on the air with Vice President Biden and also with Bernie Sanders. So they're still advertising here.
Yeah, I think Georgia does matter. And I think that, and of course, I'm enjoying, along with a lot of moderates and independents, conservatives, the bloodbath between the socialists and the crypto socialists in the Democratic Party. So let the games continue.
Well, we always like to update the U.S. Senate races. Usually these are our lead stories, but now we're in the third block. But this past week, Democratic candidate for Senate, the Reverend Raphael Warnock's wife, accused him of running over her foot during a heated argument. The couple has filed for divorce. This is a question of, I think if you're going through a personal matter and it's going to be not amicable, is this the best time? Kathy, I'll ask you to run for office. It's a tough situation.
Well, everybody's got to make their own decision on where they think things are. I think that Reverend Warnock thought that he had issues resolved, and apparently they weren't. This is a difficult time for him and his family, and it's a difficult time for the party in the elections to make sure that gets resolved and we get back on the right foot.
Janelle, will this be an issue in the upcoming, I mean, you are honorary co-chair of Kelly Loeffler's campaign. Do you think this will become an issue, especially in this whole world of the Me Too movement?
Yeah. So I don't think it will become an issue when it comes to the Loeffler campaign, because she has stood on and she is committed to running a positive race. So I don't think she will be attacking his personal life. But I will say that I do feel that the when you run for office in general, it does impact the whole family, and it's a discussion you should have with your entire family before you make a decision. And so if we knew that there was potentially going to be an impact of this magnitude, and that's something that should have been talked about and addressed before announcing.
Darren, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, Pastor Warnock has made a decision that he wants to run for U.S. Senate. I think that, to Kathy's point, we got to let people's personal life be their personal life. Unfortunately,
in politics?
Well, but yeah, definitely in politics, right? But because he is going through, I'm sure, a very difficult divorce with this soon-to-be ex-wife. And I think that, let's be fair on the show, that there was also reports that, based on her claim that there was a police report that did not maybe somewhat support what we all thought that would have happened if her foot was ran over. I would say this, though. I think Reverend Warnock is taking this very seriously. It's probably not the most ideal way to deal with your campaign, but it's early, and we got a long way away from November. So I do think he has the opportunity, which he's already done. He's addressed the congregation. He's asked them to pray for him, his wife, his kids. And so I think that you'll see him publicly at the right time talk about this and try to really get back settled and run his campaign.
All right. And I really want to mention this issue. U.S. Census mailers are going out. Most viewers here will receive a card in the mail telling them that they can go online to fill out their census form. This is a big deal. All that federal tax money that we send to Washington, Georgia wants its fair share back. And next year, state lawmakers will redraw district lines based on the census. Theron and I have been the marketing co-directors of the State Complete Count Committee, so we're trying to get the word out. But no doubt, if you're at home and you're stuck at home, there's no reason you can't fill out that form online.
And your kids are going to be there with you, so you can count them right there.
Yes,
just in case
don't forget
you
to count your
had
kids,
a question. Right?
And you can explain how important the census is to them.
Yep. That's right.
All right, thanks everyone. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Well, I'd like to start with our winner this week, Rebecca Chase Williams. She lost her fight with cancer this week. As many of you know, Rebecca, or Becky, was the wife of Dick Williams, our patriarch here at the Georgia Gang, our former host. Rebecca was a pioneer in so many ways, an award-winning journalist for ABC News, and known by many as the founding mother of Brookhaven. So, Dick, we're thinking of you, praying for you and your two beautiful daughters. And I know some of you want to weigh in. Phil.
Well, that's right. Condolences, yes, to the Williams family, and she was an amazing woman, and I thought that was a very good setup, Lori. An award-winning journalist. She, of course, was a mayor over in Brookhaven, a tremendous civic activist, and just someone that every community would want to have a good quality of life.
I would say this, oftentimes when I first started the show, I would call Dick and Sunday and say, hey, what do you think about the show? And I was very particular about my questioning because I really wanted to know what Becky thought. And the first person to comment on my socks was Becky. And Dick never really got into the sort of swag that I like to bring to the show with my sock game. But definitely, she was always there for him and their two daughters, and she's going to be missed. And I had an opportunity to text with Dick this week, and the first thing he said was, I'm doing okay, just pray for Becky. And so definitely want to offer my condolences as well.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, then we'll kind of maneuver here and switch into winners and losers.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, first, I think winners, let's thank all the CDC employees who have just been on overdrive, trying to understand what's going on here in this country, what's going on around the world, and give advice to our elected leaders. The first responders who are responding to health emergencies, this is a really critical issue, to make sure that our first responders have the equipment they need, that they're healthy so that they can go in and help us when we need them, and all the medical staff, in the state and around the country. We just got to put our hats out. And then I want to give a shout out to James Hodges, age 9. 29. He's a fan of the Georgia Gang. He's been watching the presidential primaries and doing the vote count. So James, keep it up. You can have my job soon. And we're glad you're paying attention.
All right, Janelle.
Yeah. And so along with prayers to the Williams family, I also would like to send prayers to Congressman Graves as well. His son was injured in a cycling accident, so we're definitely sending prayers to him. And then congratulations to my friend Clay Fuller, who's running for Congress in the 14th Congressional District, but he received a National Security Award from the Trump administration this past week, and I thought that was awesome as well.
Phil.
Well, winners, President Trump, Vice President Pence, and that whole health team that I think are doing the best they can to try to manage this and keep people informed and be transparent. And a loser is over in Clark County, Athens, Clark County. You know, the Board of Elections foolishly voted 3-2 to go back to paper ballots. Well, that's totally in violation of the state law. The county attorney said, I'm not even going to defend you because this is totally against the law. Brad Raffensperger is fining them and getting them back into compliance. So it's just a waste of money for the taxpayers over there.
Theron.
I love the
30
people,
seconds.
love my good people in Athens. Keep up the good fight.
Are you in favor of that?
My first winner is going to basically be along the lines of Kathy. Definitely want to thank all the state capitol workers. They've stayed there all during this week, late night. Definitely want to give a big shout out to Helen Kelly, who started off as a doorkeeper. She's been there for 17 years, and now she's a program, a page program staff. And then also want to offer my condolences to former Mayor Kasim Reed. He lost his father this week, June Reed. So definitely want to offer condolences to him and Dr. Phillips as well.
All right, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.